give a brief introduction to our visitor today, to Joo-Seuk. So he is the CEO, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this, Prettel, SWH. And I had a quick look at your mission statement on your website. So this is a company based in Korea and Vietnam, a leading provider of electric device solutions for automotive industries, with a mission statement to develop best-in-class sensor, connectivity and electrification solutions for the mobility of the future, no less. Joo-Seuk oversees operations in Korea and Vietnam after joining the German company Bosch as a management trainee in 2004. He worked in various positions and locations within the company for the next 17 years. He has worked in India, Singapore, and Japan, passionate about Asia's role in the 21st century. He was a part of the inaugural class of Network of Korean American Leaders Korea in 2016. Joo-Seuk holds a degree in Business Administration and Economics from the University of Hohenheim. His origin story is also a story about contemporary Korean history. He was born in Germany to a mother who was a nurse and a father who was a miner. Welcome, Joo-Seuk. I'll hand over to you.
Sam, I can put this aside, right? I think we'll move slightly later. Sorry, direction. Oh, I need that for speaking. All right, that is fine. Good.
So now we've figured out the technology and everything. So first of all, thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to talking briefly about myself, my company, and I'm looking forward to have a couple of questions from you. So please feel free to ask anything that you are interested about. Just to start, so Hohenheim, Steffi, who is a mother of a daughter that goes to Dulwich College as well, is today here, and I'm very glad because, I think similar to you, born somewhere else and you go to school here, we went to the same college back in Germany, and that's one of the reasons when she saw my picture, I guess she says, this looks like him, maybe I should see and check whether everything is true that he says, so we'll see about that. So I think, this is where my presentation starts. I roughly want to give like 15 minutes, short videos, just to give an impression what I do about myself and the company, but then I'm very much looking forward to a Q&A session and hopefully a couple of questions from you. So I'll do a quick introduction of myself, Korea, Vietnam, what we do in Prettel at this company, and then, as I said, the questions. So where am I from? So whenever I get this question, it's a little bit difficult. Now it's a little bit easier because I live at least in Korea, but before that I was born in Germany. So I get this question and then I say, well, depends on what you know. Like I know, typically they want to know why I look like this, but when they say, where do I come from? I say, I'm from Germany. And they say, no, where are you really from? So I'm sure many of you get to hear similar questions, and so that's where my origin is. And as it was introduced, there is a famous story which was made into a movie. I don't know whether some of you have seen it. It's called Ode to My Father, or in Korean it's 국제시장. It came out in 2012, 13, something like that. And when I watched it with two other friends that have the exact same story of a mom that is a nurse and a father that's a miner, we were crying like little babies because the whole movie is just beautifully describing the struggles that our parents went through, and I hope I can talk a little bit more about this a little bit later. Initially, I wanted to make a little quiz, but I think with this group of class it won't be that fun. That's why I'm clicking through. Initially, I wanted to ask who knows this country flag, but I wasn't sure how old the audience will be, so I'll skip that. I lived in India from 2009 till 11. This was my first foreign assignment when I still worked at Bosch. And I think it has formed me, and that's why I say, where am I from? There's a little bit of India in me. My wife and me, we love Indian food. So that's, if you want to know anything about it, I can give you a menu that you can always use. You go to an Indian restaurant. After that, from 2011 to 16, I moved to Singapore and lived there for 5 years. And before I came to Korea, I lived in Tokyo, Japan for about 5 years. So in Singapore, luckily, and same as in India, you speak English, so I could go by there. In Japan, I tried to learn the language. It is kind of limited to ordering food, but at least that I can do now in Japanese. Namju asked me, share a little bit also about your, background and your baby story. So this is how I looked as a baby. My mom refers to me and says, luckily you have turned out this way. She thinks that I was really ugly as a baby. And I admittedly say I have no real recollection of this, but I'm not ashamed to show and share the pictures. And a couple of impressions. This is Singapore in one picture for me. I worked at a company called Bosch. I played a lot of field hockey, which I still also try today in Korea at Yongsan School. I think they just opened a new field hockey pitch. Then if you get older, you kind of convert into another game which is similar to hockey, which became golf for me, and I found a group of people and friends in Japan. The picture is not very good, but we love skiing, so we go. We try to go every year to the northern island of Hokkaido. There's a beautiful place if you have ever a chance, and if you love winter sports and snow, I highly recommend that. And ask your parents to go there. And this is one picture of me on top of one of the highest buildings in Tokyo called Shibuya Stream, from which I'm trying to point on the Olympic Stadium, which was delayed, happened in 2021 instead of Tokyo 2020. Yeah, that's me in a couple of pictures. What do we do at Prettel? I wanted to start with a quick video to give you some impressions. I started a little bit over a year ago in November of last year, and I'll share a little bit about what I want to achieve and what I did. So this was a workshop in May of last year, and a couple of impressions, a short video. So, and maybe we'll speak a little bit about this later as well. When I came to Korea, for me, Korea is very traditional, very conservative. And so one of the things I wanted to achieve is to bring in a new corporate culture. And this workshop was one of the trials of, bringing in a new kind of mindset to have fun, to laugh, and also enjoy time together. So this was a short summary, and I have another one short video at the end. So typically, if I try to explain what I do at Prettel, we are in the automotive industry or the mobility industry, and when you think about a car or mobility, you maybe think about this. For me, it looks like this. So if you remove the hood and everything, there's a lot of wires that run inside the car for different types of devices, instruments, for example, your navigation, your music that comes out and stuff like that. So there are a lot of cables inside the car, and we hope that we produce and build them and then sell them to some of our customers. And this is called wire harnesses. There were a couple of months ago, if you have European roots, then there was a big issue a couple months ago because majority of this is currently produced in the Ukraine. And since the Russian invasion, a lot of the places there had to shut down, and this became then one of the big problems. So if one of your fathers or mothers ordered a car and it came very late, one of the reasons could have been because these wire harness couldn't be produced. So we do this for cars, but we also do this for electric two-wheelers, and this is a new company called E3. It's actually a Seoul or a Korean-based startup, and they are planning to launch electric two-wheelers in Korea, but also other markets. They're looking into Indonesia, Vietnam, and Thailand, for example. And and so we also try and hope that we can produce vehicles there. Namju also asked me whether I could provide a little bit of an insight about what we do at the company. So I brought a couple of examples of so-called thank you cards. And what that is I wanted to kind of instill a culture of being thankful, or maybe also being apologetic for certain things, what you said or did in a meeting or in a workshop or whatever it is. So we created these small little cards, and I have some of you if you are interested. We call them thank you cards, so that you can pick them at any place in the company and make a short note and give it to one of your co-workers. Could be just because we are all so busy all the time that we don't actually remember to take a minute and thank people, or just maybe reward or think about what they have achieved. And so this was one of the initiatives that I started at the company, which has received a lot of feedback, in the sense of people were saying, oh, this is different, this is new. So this is, I think, a perspective that I try to provide when coming to the company. A second thing, I had a big task and challenge of moving our offices. So in November of last year, so roughly 4 months ago, we had an opportunity to move from a very old, like 30-year-old building and factory-like office environment into a new office. And I have a short video of that. And for me there also you can see it was important to have a lot of open space where people come together and hopefully start to communicate, ask questions, ask how anybody is doing. And that's like one of the, I would say, bigger achievements that I've achieved so far. And just to give you a glimpse, I also have a short video for this at the end. I wanted to kind of wrap up, and I felt like coming to a school, maybe share a little bit what I have learned over the last 44 years. And it starts with passion. So I maybe can give, if I may, give you a little bit of recommendation to look for something that you are passionate about. And maybe ask your questions, what are you good at and what do you like? And that may not necessarily be math or geography or something like that. It can be e-games or music, which are maybe not very typical paths of your career. But if you're passionate about it, I think you can get very good at it. Similar with regards to learning, and especially here in the environment of a school. I know it doesn't always feel like that, but one of the things that I believe have brought me where I am today is that I was always curious to learn new things. So as I said, be that soccer, e-games, or mathematics, I think try that stuff that you feel that you are interested about and continue to learn always throughout your life in a way. The third is, and this probably sounds a little bit like your parents, but do care about the people that are important in your life. You may not always think that these are your parents that are forcing you to learn and do extra classes and stuff like that. But there will be a point in your life when I think you will start to miss them. Latest, for example, when they unfortunately pass away, and the time until then is limited. So I think one of the recommendations is do care about the people that are important in your life. The last one is creativity and innovation. I think you are, many of you are in a situation where you are blessed that you have so many options that are available for you, because you have probably lived in many different countries already and different cultures. Maybe a slightly bigger question, and ask yourself, what does the world need? And maybe you can contribute towards that mission. And I also did a quick glimpse on the website of the school, and I found this picture of your school, and I thought, and I hope that the school is providing you the environment to do many of the things that you can also see on this board. But please challenge me, ask me questions later. And with that, I would like to finish with the last video, which is our new office near Seoul, a little bit south in Anyang. this is my last picture, and I'm looking forward to our Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your these wonderful insights, your story, fascinating story, and your learning. I'd like to invite you to just come and sit with me, and I'd like to start off with the first question to you, and then we're going to open up to the floor for questions for you, Joo-Seuk. So please join me here on the stage. I'm intrigued by identity. I mean, here in an international school, it's always so interesting asking our students, where are you from? And the responses you get are hugely variable, as you can imagine. Are we okay, Sam? Thank you. So I wanted to ask you a question about your identity. You talked about your identity. How has your own identity evolved? And do you feel that the question of identity is an important one?
Yeah, so also with Namju and my wife, who have lived in different countries, I think identity is a very, very important question to me. My typical answer first, is I'm Korean German. And I want to explain this a little bit. When people see me, of course, they see a Korean face. But I was born in Germany, so also my German is significantly better than my Korean. And that's why I cannot say that I'm Korean only or German only. But also over the time, I realized that I'm actually quite Korean. So one of the things that I realized, I could never live without kimchi, for example. So I love that so much. My fridge will forever stink when I open it because it has to be part of my diet. And what I realized is that identity is a very important and crucial part to talk about, but also maybe to explain where you come from and what makes you feel connected to certain places. So I have a say, and that is home is not a place, it is people. So my parents, my brother with his family, they live in Germany, so that's why I consider this home and an important part of my life. But I also have managed to now build up a home for myself in Korea. So I don't think home, identity, these topics, they can be kind of mixed. And if you, for example, also don't like certain things about your identity, I think face them, try to challenge, try to understand where it comes from, whether you are a certain way. I learned this, for example, as a Korean, I believe, I tend to be very harmonious. I don't like fighting or, those kind of things. So I like to look for harmonic situation, and that's why I realized this is part of my identity, maybe also part of my past. And I continue to explore my identity and me as a person.
Thank you so much. I'm sure a lot of our students can see themselves in exactly what you're saying. I know that for a fact. We'll open up the questions that you have for Joo-Seuk, I'm sure, about his story, his company. So please.
The first one that asks the question, I promised, you get a tiny little reward. I brought, this is my company bag, so you get at least a German chocolate. I don't know whether you know it, but please prepare your question and I'll get you a small little candy at least.
Wait, can I ask right now?
No, I was gonna ask.
What? Okay, you can go.
Okay. Could you tell us what it was like growing up in Germany, and maybe about how big the Korean community was there?
Sure. Any Germans in this room? I try to be aware of asking. The two of you I know, so that's fine. So I grew up a little bit south of Stuttgart in a small town called Böbling. And the Korean community was tiny, so we had literally 30 families in the whole surrounding of Stuttgart. And my father, for whom learning was very important and learning Korean language, he founded the Korean school actually in 1983, which is 40 years ago. So this year will mark a jubilee, and he tasked me to also continue and support him in doing something for the school. So basically we all kind of knew each other. We had to go to Korean school on Saturdays. I didn't fully understand it, and maybe a mix of the question of identity and growing up as a Korean kid. I came back from kindergarten when I was like 6 or 7, and I asked my mother a very innocent question. I asked her why she has so funny looking eyes, because everybody in my kindergarten was, of course, white and German. And then she had to laugh because she thought, oh, that's kind of cute. She pulled me in front of the mirror and then, showed me that I look exactly the same. And apparently I cried really, really heavily because I didn't want to accept that. So I was different, and I kind of started seeing and learning that from the very beginning. But yeah, Sundays I was not allowed to have kimchi because at that time, smelling like garlic and kimchi and all that wasn't so common and normal in the German school. But other than that, I would say Germany is a very good place and environment to grow up in general. We like to go back minimum 2 or 3 times a year because we still have family there, and it'll always have a special role in our lives. Thank you.
Even though you're like half German, you stayed in Asia for such a long time. So was your long-term move to Asia deliberate?
No. I did also like a short stint in Brazil for 6 months when I started working for Bosch as a company. So I went there, and this whole thing, the combination of carnival, a lot of meats, and just the lifestyle in Brazil. I kind of said at that time I learned a little bit of Spanish or Portuguese in Brazil, so I know Namju also speaks fluent Spanish. So I said at that time I'm meio brasileiro. So I said I'm half Brazilian, or I wanted to be, because also Brazil is a very diverse country. When I moved out, and this was the final move in 2009 with Bosch to India, I thought I'll stay there for 2-3 years, that's it, and I go back to Germany. But then as things kind of developed, at that time boss then asked me, hey, how about you move to Singapore? I have something interesting. You can travel to the different ASEAN countries around Singapore, like Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, Indonesia, and help develop the business. So I said, oh, that sounds good, so I'll try that. And so for me, at a certain time, there were always kind of opportunities that led to that next step, which then was the move to Japan, and also finally leaving Bosch, which was a big step, and coming to Korea and trying to work for a different company. So it wasn't, I think, as deliberate, but also something that you will start to develop later in life. If you meet your life partner, and that is my wife, you actually don't take decisions alone anymore. So these days, before I can answer, well, how long are you going to stay here? I have to look and check, well, I don't know, how long are we going to stay here? So this is, I think, the question regarding how long we're going to stay here. Was it deliberate? No, it wasn't. It just kind of happened.
How did you become interested in the wire harness? Like your job, yeah.
So because nobody from my company is here, I'm not interested in wire harnesses. So I don't love doing that. But even before that, I was in the automotive segment of Bosch. So we sold wiper blades and spark plugs. Also not very interested in that. What I was, and I apologize if I'm a little bit too honest, but don't tell anybody if you ever meet somebody from my company. What I was always interested in, and this was also basically in the combination of moving to Asia, I could kind of bridge the gap between like a company trying to operate in Asia, be it in India, be it in Singapore or ASEAN, and now in Korea, and try to kind of be the bridge to Germany. Because, depending on where you come from, there are, and I'm sure you learned this, different ways on how you communicate and different ways on how you behave. Germans love to, for example, be punctual. So Steffi, for example, she was here at, I think, 2:05, right? Why? Because she's German. She knew it started at 2:30, so she had to be on time. And there's many different other cultures that have a different view of looking at it. And so I am always interested to work in an international environment. So I do love different cuisines more than German food, for example. So it's not so much the wire harness itself, it was the role within the company that allows me to do things that I'm passionate about. And so that's why I chose to come here and yeah, give it a try.
Do you have a role model?
Role model, or several. Mostly sports, so I wish I could play golf as good as Tiger Woods. No, there's, I mean, to be honest, probably certain people that I feel very, yeah, role model-like. Like within my company, of course, there are certain people that have a certain career, I follow them. But for me, people like, now the name just dropped. South African president, help me out. Yeah, Mandela.
Nelson Mandela.
Nelson Mandela. Thank you very much. So I think, you know, if you know a little bit about his life, what he had to go through and what he did after, especially coming out of jail, and how he then became the president of South Africa. I would say this is a story that I find very intriguing and very fascinating, that he could forgive and, you know, pass a little bit on what happened before, and that he would not, you know, like kind of give revenge to what has happened to him, but that he was interested more in building something bigger for his country and for his people. And so that's, I think, like, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm like a Nelson Mandela, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying, I think, you know, these are the stories of people that I try to follow and try to understand a little bit better to follow. I mean, in the business world, it's like people like Steve Jobs or Phil Knight from Nike, you know, I mean, there are also written books about these guys. And if you follow them, I mean, Steve Jobs' thing was this whole stay curious, stay foolish, which I think is also a sentence that I like to follow. So there's many of them. I couldn't name, I think, one role model.
Could you tell us a little bit about your parents? How did they influence your upbringing and the choices you made in your career path?
Yeah, so this is this could get a very emotional story because it is your parents. So I'm now 44 years old. My parents are soon turning 80. And you have to imagine, and I'm sure many of you know the history of Korea. So there was a Korean War. After that, it was poorer than North Korea at that time. And my parents, so my father was the third kid of his family, and my mother was the third daughter of her family. And basically, there was no money left whatsoever for their education or anything. So in their early 20s, they then decided to try out something new. And if you live in Germany, you know that after the Second World War in Germany, there was a lot of foreign labor they were trying to bring to Germany to build up the country. We call them foreign workers or Gastarbeiter in Germany. And so my parents went as well. Because Korea was so poor, there was an agreement between Germany and Korea that they would get basically part of their debt, I believe, kind of just forgotten for the fact that they would send labor to Germany. And so there are certain parallels because, you know, sometimes people say, well, did you maybe for similar reasons move away from Germany and move to India? And I never thought about that before because I thought the circumstances were very, very different. But nonetheless, my parents did that because they were expecting a better future for themselves in Germany. And my parents hated Germany. I mean, they spoke no word of German. They were treated not very nicely because they were workers, right? My mom a nurse and my father a miner, as you said before. And again, I think this movie, Ode to My Father, is a pretty good reflection of how they were perceived at that time. My parents both then decided, though, that it would be a better choice to stay in Germany. They had many friends that, for example, would move to either the US or Australia, and they chose deliberately. There are many good things about Germany, and the education system is good. We have something that I'm not sure about the exact word, but basically vertical like rising within a society was possible. So it's, I think, not very usual that within one generation my parents could make sure to provide for me to go to school, to go to university, and I then get a university degree that I, for example, one day could become a CEO of a company. There's not many countries where this is so easy, and I mean, here in Korea, for example, I mean, many say, you know, if you don't do well in your sunung, you don't go to, you know, one of the Sky University, then life in Korea will become very, very difficult for you. Germany is slightly different, where the background of where you come from and what you've done is not as important, and it matters more what you provide, what you perform, and how good you are. So now this is questionable, but I have done certain things in my life in the past okay, that then allowed me to continue to achieve a certain career. So yeah, I think the impact and also many of the disciplines, or the what do you call it, the characteristics that my personality, I think, comprise of, hardworking, try to stay humble, I think are things that I've learned from my parents, and for that I'll be forever grateful for them to be. So I also try to pay back, and they come and visit Korea now. They came in October, November for the last time to last year to Korea, spent time with us, and so I also try to kind of pay back this loan that I've received from my parents. Apologize, slightly long answer to a fairly simple question, I think.
So you mentioned this movie, Ode to My Father. Could you maybe talk more about that and like your experience with that?
Yeah. So I mean, I described a little bit this is the story. So I think Korean movies made a movie out of the whole fact of Koreans and the diaspora being out in the world. Ode to My Father is described. Who has seen that movie, Ode to My Father? Yeah. So it describes basically. The story is told from the position of a grandfather that looks back on his life and what he has done and achieved. And so he went to Germany in the end 60s, early 70s, meets his wife there. She cycles, I think, and he gets totally fascinated by her. He dies several deaths almost along the way. He actually also goes to Vietnam, and I think supports there after during the war, actually, in Vietnam, and then comes back. So I think it's a fascinating story on I think what Korea as a country has gone through to become what it is today, and maybe kind of linking it to the question of identity. I think because things have happened here so fast, I believe that many things are not yet set right, and I think we are trying to develop that. I mean, I can tell you, like when I grew up as a kid, you know, nobody knew Korea. They said, Korea what? You know, it was, they knew China and they knew Japan, but that was kind of it. And so, you know, 1988, the Olympic Games in Seoul, first thing they heard about it, but then as media plays it, the only two things they knew about South Korea is you eat dogs here and you have some issue with North Korea. And so, I don't know, I mean, how often does it happen to you? You travel somewhere and people say you come from Korea or you live in Korea, and then they say North or South. So this happens to me all the time, right? And I think now for the last few years you see stuff like BTS, Son Heung-min in the Premier League. There are, you know, elements of things that happen where identity is formed and people say Korea is interesting or something, there's something about it, rather than is it maybe a province somewhere in China. I've heard that before. They say, where in China is Korea again? And I was like, no.
How many languages do you speak and how did you learn them?
We spoke about that before, and typically I always ask back, well, so people ask me, do you speak Korean, right? And I usually nowadays ask back, how well do you speak Korean? Because I mean, I speak Korean, but it's not super fluent, it's not my mother tongue. I would say these days I probably speak 3 languages, German, English, Korean. I used to have French on my resume until I realized I really don't speak a single word. And I had it on, you know, I went to school and I learned 4 years of French, but I was not very good at it. So I used to speak a little bit of Portuguese, and because Portuguese and Spanish are similar, when I traveled to Argentina, then they would understand my broken Portuguese and go back. So I think I can survive in many different environments, but I'm not sure whether that's related to my language skills or to my personality. So, yeah.
In Prattle SWH group, what does SWH mean?
Oh, very good. Sensor wire harness. So it's there's like some legal reasons to that, but basically that's what we're trying to do. We create sensors, or we buy sensors, and we build them together into wire harnesses. And that's the background and the name of the company.
So earlier you talked about how you wanted to bring a kind of newer work culture to Korea because it's really strict, and you showed us the video earlier and how it was more fun and lively. And so I want to ask you what your leadership style is.
So, I mean, once you grow older, you will get to learn all these different leadership styles. I would say there's the different styles of like command and control. You say, you do. Or boss says and somebody else has to do. This, I think, is the normal prevalent one here in Korea. So they hope that the guy on the top is super smart and takes all the right decisions, and then you just do that. Sometimes I feel Samsung is a little bit too much relying on this, but anyway. I like to have like what we call like a participatory leadership. So I want other people to feel that they can influence the decision. So rather than taking decisions myself, I go back and ask always, well, what do you think? What's your proposal? In Korea, this is part of the challenge because it's a kind of question that they are not used to. They provide data, they do it very nicely and put it into a PowerPoint or an Excel file, and then they give it to you, and then they say, okay, you now decide. So this is something I'm trying to change, and I try to explain to them that, I mean, by far, I wouldn't know wire harness as well as many of my colleagues and associates. And that's why I want them to feel okay with taking these decisions. But I think it's still a long way to get to that point, because for them, like taking decisions, taking also ownership and responsibility is something that they are not necessarily used to. So sometimes in my presentations I put this, Spider-Man picture in, where I think the uncle says to Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. So I feel the same. So people, I'm not sure about whether I want that much responsibility and power.
So since you're working in like the electrical, like automobile industry, and like in recent years, like there's more electric cars, do you feel sad that like combustion engines are going away? Because, I like good engines, like a V8, for instance.
Good question. Maybe one day you will get to see and hear this. My wife works in environmental issues, so she cares about the world. And ideally, nobody in the world should drive a car, because it would be much better to have buses, trains, and so on and so forth. So, coming back to your question, yes, I miss a nice V8 engine, but I think it's like, I love meat, but I think we sometimes don't fully understand what are the consequences of certain decisions. So I like V8 engines, but do I want that everyone in the world, now over 8 billion people, should drive a V8 engine car on the streets? I think no. So this is part of the problem. I mean, you live in Seoul, you're probably stuck in traffic jam all the time. That's not how a city and an environment should be, right? You want to get from A to B, and we were once exposed to doing that in a V8 engine, and that's why we like it. But if you do this on a daily level and you're always stuck in traffic jams, that's not how the world, I think, should run. So this, I think, is still part of my personal journey and exploration to kind of find out whether I should continue to be in the automotive industry. But I think there's a trend towards the better, and a conversation that is necessary to have, and that is a city, and Daehan should, in Gangnam, for example, they shouldn't have, I think, 6 lanes. Why? Because it's, you know, people like us, like students or parents that actually want to go from a restaurant or to their home, and you know, 6 lanes of street on each side actually hinder us to do that. And so I think that'll be a longer conversation to be had, but I encourage you to ask, I don't know, I mean, what do your parents drive? I mean, I'll ask them whether they miss their V8 engine or not.
I wanted to ask about Bosch specifically because you mentioned it before, but what are some skills and knowledge you gained from your time there that you value the most?
So I'll be forever thankful. I mean, I worked at this company for 17 years, and it is a very forward-thinking organization and company that cares about the people. So for example, in Germany, they were one of the first ones back in the 80s that would make working only 40 hours a week a mandatory rule at their company. So there are too many skills that I could name that I've learned at this company, but the one that I probably will always cherish most is, I mean, it's not the most important thing, you know, to make a lot of money or, you know, to have the biggest market share, but to do this in an environment where you also care for your people, meaning, you know, you have good benefits and a salary that everybody can live a nice life, and you get opportunities to learn, explore, and maybe also explore the world, which for me was a huge reason and benefactor why I chose to work for Bosch, because I just knew that they were present all around the world, and it also brought me to different places in the world. So that is maybe not really a skill, but something that I'll be forever thankful for the company, that I had the chance to work for them and with them.
Hi, Susie, Head of Senior School. We've got our Year 12 and 13 students here, and they're thinking about their next steps and looking at beyond university and life in the workplace. As an employer, what do you think are some of the biggest skills that you are looking for in the next generation coming up of workers for you?
So, I mean, of course, I can only share my subjective view to that. I mean, there are certain things which I believe are the base minimum, and you already have a very good base if you go to Dulwich College, which is you get great teachers, you get a good curriculum, and you learn relevant things. So hardworking, you know, being resilient, going through difficult exam phases and stuff like that. I think that's what employers look for. One of the things that I think particularly in Korea we need more, but I believe also in the world, is critical thinking. So, you know, challenging maybe your bosses or your co-workers, I mean, without being arrogant or without being condescending. Meaning to say, bring an argument, but be informed about what you want to discuss and talk about, and then have a substantial discussion about what you have. So I think, you know, don't just do whatever somebody tells you, but challenge the why behind it, to understand why you do certain things. Because you may disagree with what the direction is, and then maybe you know, you also realize that this is not the right environment or the right company for you to work in. So I think that part of critical thinking, forming your own opinion based on knowledge, good sources where this knowledge comes from. And I know these days it's not so much Facebook for the young people anymore, but maybe other platforms. Try to understand, don't just believe everything that people tell you, but try to form your own opinion about what you hear and what you get to say. Is I think one of the recommendations that I believe employers would cherish most if you are starting to work or look for a career.
What has been one of your biggest challenges when being a CEO?
Majority of that is like internal stuff, like it's providing the numbers, doing this report and stuff like that. So I think that the challenges are trying to kind of balance things that I love doing, which is, for example, coming and speaking to young people and hopefully hearing from them and being in such an environment versus like the normal day-to-day stuff and reviews and meetings that you have to have. So I think balancing that and being responsible for many of the decisions that I take. So that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges that I see as a CEO, and being in responsible positions. I think this is not only limited to being a CEO, but having influence and a lot of impact and decisions, I think, is to decide what to do with your time.
Thank you so much, Joseph, for sharing, firstly for coming here today and sharing your insights and your experiences. I know that so much of what you have said here today resonates with our students and valuable lessons for us all to take away and think about. So thank you so much for coming today. Let's give Joseph a round of applause.